Hello, lovelies. I'm sure you've heard it before. Healers, spiritual healers, energy workers, shamans. Are these the same thing? And what exactly is this work? And more importantly, is it going to work for you? Is it relevant for you? So hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Mateka, and I help those with cancer navigate their inner journey towards health and wellness on all levels, physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically, and spiritually, to stack the odds in their favor. So I realize I've made several videos on naturopathic medicine and several on personal development, personal empowerment, but what was missing was any video on energy work. So let this be the intro. It may be more of a 101, but whether you're very familiar with energy work, have heard of it and want to learn more, or have no idea about it, I guarantee you'll learn something interesting from this video. So stay tuned, and stay tuned for next time or another time in the near future where I will take a deep dive and go into some really interesting stuff, more of the science of it and things like that. So yeah, basically what I said, energy healer, energy worker, healer, spiritual healer, those all mean the same thing. Now, shaman, that's a bit different. They're sort of in a category of their own. They do energy work, aka energy healing, but they're sort of in a league all their own with a particular training, lifestyle, and oftentimes lineage. So we'll keep that one separate. But yeah, if you hear the terms energy worker, energy healer, it's the same thing. It's usually a matter of preference of what the person likes to say. Light worker is another one. Light worker, those terms that mean the same thing. And I prefer the term energy worker personally, just because there's nothing wrong with the word healer, but for me, I really like to emphasize the fact that I'm not healing anybody. It is ultimately always the person that I'm working on, the client, the patient. It is them that's healing themselves, and it always is. All we can do are really facilitate that healing, removing blocks, balancing energies, bringing things to awareness, things of that nature. So how do we define this though? What does it mean, energy work, energy healing? So actually there was a scientific study that is relevant for cancer called Transcriptional Changes in Cancer Cells Induced by Exposure to a Healing Method. And that study defined energy healing as healing with intent. And it's a good definition because, that essentially is what's happening, is we are using the power of intention, but it goes beyond that as well. Another definition for energy work or energy healing, light working, I guess, is that what we're doing is we're working on the energy field. So it's strategies, tools, techniques, modalities, anything essentially, any sort of like healing modality that is working on the energy field, aka the etheric field, aka the aura, the bioelectromagnetic field. There are several names for that as well, but it is a very real thing. It is the frequency that we're giving off, because we're all vibrating. So you'll hear a lot of talk about vibration, frequency, energy, and they're not just spiritual woo-woo terms. Every single thing that's matter on this planet is energy, has an energy field. Even my camera, this laptop down here, inanimate objects, because they're composed of atoms and electrons that are spinning, and the spinning is vibrating, and that's the frequency, and the frequency that's being emitted, can be considered the energy field. And it's just that things with life force, things that are alive, have a much stronger energy field and life force. And different things have different frequencies, like our liver is going to have a different frequency than our kidneys, and altogether there's sort of a generalized frequency for the human body and whatnot. But yes, working on the bioelectromagnetic field, because the electrons, we have electricity going on in our body and magnetism. I'm going to get more into the sciencey stuff in another video, like I said. But what we can say is we are working, energy work works in the quantum realm. So the quantum deals with the very, very, very small subatomic particles, like the electrons, for example, as well as the other subatomic particles. And electrons, as we know, they have a duality effect. They can be expressed as a wave and they can be expressed as a particle. When they're expressed as a particle, that's what shows up in our physical matter reality. But they can also be a wave, which is in the realm of the non-physical. You could even say metaphysical. And with energy work, we're working on the electrons in the wave form, so that when they turn into the particle form, that's kind of how it can translate. I guess another better way of saying it is, so working on the energy field, we're working on that first, and then that can translate into the physical. And that's really the better way to go about it, because everything starts non-physical and then goes to physical. So this is proven with physics. The electron, like I just talked about, it is always a wave before it is a particle. And that's how we know it's metaphysical before physical, and why it's smart to work on the energy of something first before it translates. Because once it's a physical, it's already physical, but we can work on the energy and we can change things that way a lot of times much more effectively, because electrons are always wave before particle. So I don't think I need to get any more deeper or more complicated than that right now. Of course, I'm no physicist and they could explain it better, but yeah, I will save that for another video. But so energy medicine, and okay, for people like me who are very analytical left brain, you could say, well, doesn't anything have the potential to affect the energy field? And in a way, that's true. And that's where the other definition comes into account. We are affecting the energy field with intent. And that's why there are so many different kinds of energy medicine modalities. It's not even funny. So a lot of the ones that people are familiar with are Reiki and pranic healing. Those are two of very popular ones. And just and as an example, here's some slight differences with that. Reiki is more about being a vessel for the universal life force, the quantum field, whatever you want to call it. And the healing facilitator is a vessel for that energy. And they direct that energy to the person, and it has an intelligence all its own, so it is expected that it will go where it needs to go for the greatest and highest good, and it typically does. With pranic healing, though, it's a little more, I would say there's a little more structure to it, and there's a little more steps, and some say it's more powerful. And what you're doing first is you're assessing the energy by feeling it, typically. And what you're going to be doing first is removing the diseased energy, the depleted or congested energy, and then you're going to be energizing with the giving of the positive energy. And that is definitely very, very powerful. So that's an example of some of the differences. But did you know that acupuncture is technically energy medicine? Which shouldn't be too much of a surprise, because acupuncture is working on meridians, which is like the energy lines in the body, and the needles in acupuncture are going onto energy points to essentially, release the chi or unblock the chi, which is what they call energy. And then prana is another word for energy. And there's some other ones as well. But yeah, so acupuncture is technically an energy medicine, and homeopathy is also an energy medicine, which people don't typically know that. And a lot of times people use the term homeopathy wrong, I will say. A lot of times people use the term homeopathy interchangeably with like naturopathy or just natural home remedies, and that's not what it is. Homeopathy is a very specific naturopathic modality that is also an energy medicine, because what it is it's a substance is taken. It can be a disease substance, it could be a flower, and that substance is diluted. Parts of it are taken and put into water or alcohol, and it's diluted so many times, and every time it's like what they call succussing. So it's like shaken, it's like the energy is shaken up, you could say. And it's diluted so many times, so many times, so many times that you could actually look at that water and study that water with a microscope and be like, okay, there's nothing in here, it's just water. That's why a lot of skeptics will be like, homeopathy's bunk, it's literally just water, there's nothing in it. Little do they know, it's about the energy that's in it, because the energy of the substance that was in it is still there. And the more diluted it is, the stronger it is. That's the interesting thing about homeopathy. I'm not going to get too detailed into homeopathy because that's a whole thing in itself. But yes, and water has memory, which is why it's a good thing to hold energy. You can look to those very interesting water experiments that I talked about before, as well as many others that show that. So yeah, and nowadays there's so many energy medicine techniques. I can't even think of them all. Well, I don't know them all because there's so many. Because you can come up with your own. I mean, they're coming up with their own modalities because it can be a very intuitive thing. When I was a kid, I would just, I don't know, I mean, I grew up Catholic, so it's not like I was exposed to spiritual concepts like this, but I would just put my hands on myself when I had a headache or menstrual cramps. It was just sort of a natural thing. I would just put my hands on myself and I would just sort of, I don't know, just send, I guess for lack of a better word, I would just send energy, send healing to that body part. And it typically worked, and I also did that for boyfriends of mine, and it worked, and I was like, whoa. And then as I got older, I even helped somebody with like a really bad snake bite that should have been, very, very, very bad. And then I was like, oh, there's something to this, like hands-on healing thing. And that's happened in lots of religions. They have the hands-on healing. So eventually I took courses and things like that and really learned more structure to it. But it's something anybody can do. Anybody can learn to do this. Some are naturals, just like with anything, sports, anything. Some people it just comes to them more naturally. And then others have to work at it a little bit harder. But everybody has the capacity and capability to do that. So if you have cancer, and I do want to talk about this study. So just a little bit. It's not like this is the only study there is on energy medicine and cancer, but it's just one to give an example that there is some science behind this. And I will leave the reference in the description box so you can check out this study on your own if you would like. But they essentially took mice that had a certain type of breast cancer that is typically used in studies. So it was mice cells. It was cells. So there was mouse cells that had breast cancer, and there were some energy healers that put healing intentions into a cotton ball. And then for the control, they just used a regular cotton ball. And they would try to, grow this cancer on the cotton ball, or they put the cotton ball in the petri dish, something like that. And there was a very statistically significant difference with the cotton that had energy healer energy healer vibrations, that loving, healing energy in it. Statistically significant number of genes were downregulated, the kind of genes that would promote the cancer. So there was transcription changes, and a lot of the genes that would promote the cancer growth were downregulated, and some of the genes that would be anti-cancer were upregulated. So it's another, if you want to look into more research on energy medicine scientifically, a good researcher is Beverly Rubrick. So in a way that answers the question, could energy medicine benefit you? And the answer is yes. Now, I'm not saying it's going to cure everybody. I'm not even necessarily suggesting it's going to help everybody. It really, a lot of times depends. It depends on a few things. It depends on the healer, the energy worker, what their skill level is, and maybe their skill level is great, but that day they were just a little bit off. It does take typically more than one session, just like acupuncture, just like a lot of things. It's not just like one and done. You have to go consistently. Like with anything, you get more results the more consistent you are with it, which is why you want to do it. I mean, I would say at least weekly, but a lot of times it's better if you do it daily. but I think weekly is reasonable. Monthly might be the bare minimum. And then it also depends on the person. Like, are you receptive to healing? If you don't want that kind of healing, you actually can block it. If you think you want it, but there's some subconscious blocks about maybe some secondary gains you're getting from your illness, or who knows what, if there are some subconscious reasons you don't want to get better, you can subconsciously block the healing without even realizing it or consciously wanting it. So there's a lot of factors at play. And then finding maybe the modality or technique that's right for you, because there's so many different ones. Sound healing is another energy medicine technique, because sound is a vibration, and vibration affects matter, and the vibration works on the energy field. So sound healing is another example. And yeah, there's so many different techniques these days that just have names, Access consciousness bars come to mind. There's the super consciousness system. I mean, there's all kinds of names these days for these sorts of things. So I think that's a decent 101. So I defined it and gave you some examples and some reasons why it could be good for you. So maybe you're wondering, like, how could it benefit cancer? And there's many different ways that could be. So everything happens in our energy field first, and then it goes to our physical body. So even if you're doing things to heal your physical body, if you're not doing something to heal the energy part of it, now that could be, I talk about mental, emotional roots to cancer, and so that's all tied up in the energy field. So doing energy work can release trapped emotions, it can bring new awarenesses, or you might not actually notice anything at all, but it's still working on your energy field, doing what it needs to do, clearing up blockages and releases, because you don't actually have to know what it's doing. Like, you don't actually have to know why you have certain emotions trapped to release them and to be free from them. We don't need to understand. Our mind wants to understand, but it's not actually necessary. So a lot of this healing can take place on the energetic field without us even really knowing what's happening. So that is very good news, I would say. Okay, everyone, remember, if you would like to look at that study, I will leave the source in the description box, and also you'll find in the description box a free gift. I mentioned this last time, but I do have a free gift. If you click the link in the description box and give me your email, I will send you my free guide, which is essentially like a 38-page ebook I wrote that I'm very proud of. It actually took me quite a while to compile this, but it's on Kelly A. Turner's research on the 10 common healing factors among cancer survivors who beat the odds. So it's like decades of her research of those who had a spontaneous remission from cancer, and what it is that they did to get that spontaneous remission. What are the 10 common things these people had in common? And I go into that. So it's a really, really essential and must read for anyone recently diagnosed with cancer. So, all right, that's it, everybody. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. So much love.